You're listening to the Productive Therapist Podcast, the world's greatest and most brilliant resource for busy therapists who'd rather be laying on a beach in Hawaii. Each episode is packed with simple tips and inspiring insights from the Productive Therapist team to help you grow your practice and have fun doing it. So without further ado, let's help you get more done and have more fun.
Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Uriah, and I'm so glad you're here today. I had a conversation today with my friend, Dr. Connor McClenahan, and he leads Here Counseling, which is a group co-practice in Pasadena and Los Angeles. Awesome guy. He has a background in video marketing, as well as experience speaking at conferences, retreats, podcasts, and video courses. Dr. McClenahan helps therapists eliminate marketing anxiety and create a compelling strategy for growing their private practice. We had a chance to kind of get into the details about a study that Simple Practice put together called the State of Therapists Report. And it talks about burnout and some very concerning things to take a look at. But also the conversation with Connor today was very, I'd say, solution focused and oriented towards what changes can we make to be the best therapist that we can be and kind of ensure some longevity and some well-being in our careers and just in our lives. So take a listen and check out the links in the show notes. We have a new resource here at Productive Therapists, and we call it the Magic Call Script. And it's something that we put together that we use to train our virtual assistants and the intake coordinators in other practices that will help you really just guide potential clients from that first contact to the first session. And we would love for you to check it out. You can find it at productivetherapist.com/magic. And it's completely free. Comes with a couple extra resources just to help you kind of have those conversations, feel confident and successful. And of course, at the end of the day, help more people. So enjoy my conversation with Dr. Connor McClenahan. Connor, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Uriah. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, it's so great to talk to you.
Yeah.
So you and I have actually been on a podcast before together, but this is the first time that you're on the Productive Therapist podcast. So that's cool.
That is cool. And it's been good to kind of walk alongside you in some of this, group practice and being a therapist and everything.
Absolutely.
And, the conversations that we've had over, I don't know, I guess the years now,
It's been a few years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've inspired me in many ways in life and business. So thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So today we get to talk about some interesting things, but before we get into the topic, I would love for you just to kind of share about who you are and maybe a little bit about your story and your practice, and then we can kind of jump into it.
Yeah. Well, I'm a psychologist down in Los Angeles, and I have a group practice called Here Counseling, and we're a membership-based practice, meaning that all therapists who are part of our practice, all licensed therapists, pay a flat membership fee to be part of the group. And for me, that just felt like a good solution to what I see as a problem where a lot of therapists have to choose between either taking care of themselves financially, but being alone in their practice by having to do everything by themselves, which I don't think is, at least for a lot of therapists I know, natural to them to kind of just be off on their own, or to be part of a group and to feel really like, pressured with being an employee and all the things that come with that. And so that's just a different solution for us. But anyway, so that's what I do. And it's been meaningful to kind of figure that out and to provide some kind of service to therapists that way. But part of that is that I very much care about who we are as therapists and the life that we live day to day. When you think about how much time in your life or in my life are devoted to being in the office, working on the different clinical issues or even just, the way that you spend your time. And I think that's important. And I think how we live our lives in that way is important when you kind of zoom out and think about your entire life and what you want it to look like and how you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So those kind of questions I think are important for me, for us, for, the profession. How do we take care of ourselves and engage in ways that are uplifting and supportive and encouraging to help us be the best clinicians, but also best people we can be.
That's great. Yeah, I love that you and I both have the value of really caring about the work-life balance and just the well-being of clinicians, whether they are friends of ours, colleagues of ours, or people that work for us or have worked for us in the past. That's so important. I've always thought I want to have a long career, and I've seen, being a therapist, you can do this for many, many years, right?
Yeah.
Well into your 60s, 70s, 80s, and even
Uh-huh.
potentially beyond if you're
Yeah.
of sound mind.
Uh-huh. Right.
And
Right.
so I think what we're talking about today is so important because it does seem like a lot of things have changed. And I don't know if that's happened, things
Yeah.
have changed in the last 5, 10 years or even
Yeah.
a little bit more, but it seems like it's more intense and maybe more taxing now to be a therapist than it's ever been. So that's why I'm happy to talk about this topic with you. And what we're
Yeah.
talking about is burnout. So I would love it if you want to just share kind of like a framework or just an idea about what is burnout. We've all heard that term, but
Yeah.
like, what does it mean to you and how does it affect us as therapists?
Yeah. Totally. Well, I think first of all, even before defining it, I think we kind of
Hmm.
know what that feels like. The feeling of maybe waking up on a Monday morning and being like, and picturing the day ahead, and it feels like you can't escape, you can't do anything. And that's a really tricky and dangerous place to be in, statistically and literally, that's where therapists make the most ethical mistakes. That's where we break boundaries in lots of different ways, whether it's financially or time wise or anything. That can be a really dangerous place, but also for us personally, that's where we can kind of spiral downward. Um, and so I think we kind of know what burnout feels like when we can think of our daily lives. But burnout is prolonged stress, chronically being unable to keep up with demands. And when you're in that situation, you feel hopeless about the future, you feel depressed. It's kind of like as if you've got like, a pile of widgets to put together. And for every one that you get done, you get two more put on your plate to do. And that's untenable. We can't stay in that position for too long without really feeling the effects of that. Some as I was looking at this, I think a visual that's really helpful for understanding what it's like psychologically for us when we're in burnout state is the idea of learned helplessness, which we might remember kind of like in grad school or whatever, kind of
A little
learning
while
about
ago.
Seligman,
Hmm.
in the 1960s. He did this dog experiment where he had these dogs in a condition where half of them were put in one cage and half of them were put in a different kind of cage. And the first cage was one in which there would be a shock, and there's nothing the dog could do to make the shock go away. And so it just shocked them, and they couldn't get out of it. There's nothing they could do. In the other one, all they did, they still shocked the dogs. It's not like they, in that condition, um, it was just happy and good, but they gave a lever in there where they could press the lever to make the shock stop. Right. And there's some details about this that maybe we could kind of go into more, but to to make the shock stop, and just the ability to make the stressor stop
Hmm.
made a huge difference in the two different dogs and how they were conditioned later on when they're given a different situation in which they can just hop over a small barrier in order to avoid a shock. The dogs who didn't have the lever didn't even try to go over the barrier. They thought, it's not even going to help. If I try to cross over this bridge here, if I try to, I'm just going to get shocked anyway. And that's burnout. That's what we feel when we have been in a chronic state where demands have not stopped. There's no lever that we can push. And some question I asked there is, if we're in burnout, we can think about, okay, there's a lot of stressors, but another way that we could think about it is there's no lever to push. What is the
Right.
lever that we're supposed to push as clinicians to make the demand stop? Especially if we have financial pressures or, whatever pressures that we face as clinicians, or guilt, for example, it can make us feel like there's no lever that we can press in order to stop the demands that are coming our way. And that makes all the difference. So one way, again, is thinking of it. I think we traditionally think of burnout as there's too many stressors, but another way to think about it is that there's no way to
Hmm.
stop. There's no way to make
Hmm.
it stop. There's no escape. There's no safe base to go back to.
Yeah, that's like an unfortunate combination of hopelessness and powerlessness, or at least the
Mhm.
perception of
Yeah.
powerlessness, and that, well, they obviously tie into each other.
Hmm.
How, what do you think has happened in our profession to increase this sense or this experience of burnout?
Mm. Yeah.
Not an easy
Well,
question.
right. No, I think there's, again, when we think about on one side, you have stress, right? The amount of
Hmm.
demand that we feel as therapists, right? Um, how much is there demand or need psychologically from our clients? But the other one is and this is supported in this data that Simple Practice looked at, where they surveyed all of us clinicians and got some really good info back, is, the ability to press the lever. How do we, what is the lever that we're supposed to press, and how has it been kind of taken away? So for the first one, there has been more demand. I mean, need for therapists has risen, in a huge way, with anxiety and depression rising. And in the other way, isolation for therapists has increased as well. We're much more isolated from each other than we used to be, I think, for a variety of reasons. We live in a very individualistic culture, right? But also maybe, let's say, virtual work. The more that we practice independently, the more that we have to figure out ways to really connect with other people, other therapists, or even other friends, or whatever else it is. And I think usually that's when we think about human beings. I think, to me, that's the biggest lever that we have to push is relying on each other, connecting with each other. That's the solace that we need in the middle of a storm, is to be able to just have some kind of solidarity with other people.
That's so true. Yeah. So prolonged stress plus isolation plus the increasing need and demand and probably intensity of our clients' problems and challenges.
Yeah.
That's not a good it's not a good
recipe.
Triple threat. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, thank goodness for telehealth. I think telehealth is amazing. And there's a lot of clinicians now that are fully telehealth.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work ideally for everyone, especially if you don't go out of your way to create community or connect with other clinicians. And it's easy to do that when you just get busy, right?
Yeah.
That's true for all of us. I think anybody who's working as a full-time therapist, you're seeing your clients and you're trying to keep things moving.
Right. It is a weird thing to try to anticipate and schedule, isn't it? To just connect with other people. It's not like you need to meet and consult about something. You just need to meet sometimes and just be face to face, or I don't know, even if you can do it virtually, right? That's good. But to just level with somebody else in an informal way is such a huge benefit that I think we take for granted sometimes. My friend and colleague here, Gavin, he hosts a gathering every other Friday, I think it is, where he and I don't know, 15 to 30 other therapists, they just get together, and the rule is no consultations.
That's great.
He says we end up doing it anyway, of talking business stuff. But it's funny to me of thinking, man, all these therapists, just come just because it feels good, to connect. That's the lever that they've chosen to press during the week
that's great,
to help them kind of cool down. Yeah.
We started doing some sort of networking mixers in the area, kind of sponsoring them. And I for sure stole this name from some friends down in Orange County, but Drinks with Shrinks is just a good name. I don't think it's copyrighted. So we're doing that. And, and we're going to do things that are non-alcoholic too. We're going to have root beer night and mocktail night and those kind of things. But people, they like to come out, connect with other professionals, and hopefully not just talk about work. So critical.
Yeah, really important.
Yeah. So what kind of policy changes or personal changes, for that matter, do you think are needed in our field?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, actually, maybe before we get into that, maybe some things that inform some policy changes are kind of just, and again, Simple Practice kind of came out with this data about, how therapists are doing and why therapists tend to say that they're burned out. And I think this is actually pretty illuminating to think about, and to even kind of make it a bit personal, to go oh, this is somebody just like me who's reporting on these things. They surveyed 500 or so therapists, and they kind of gathered data. And they said 52% of therapists, these are randomly sampled therapists, 52% experienced burnout this year. And 29% of these have considered leaving the profession. I thought that was pretty staggering, so basically 15% of all therapists are considering leaving because of this stuff.
That's frightening. Yeah,
it is frightening. Yeah. And then when they said why, there are a couple top reasons, but the first one, they said 60% said that they're feeling burnout because of difficulty with work-life balance. Around 50 said that it was administration burdens, so paperwork and all the kind of nuts and bolts of trying to run a business, which I imagine you have stories about with, the way that you do your
Sure.
work. And then about 50% say it's compassion fatigue, that feeling of just the endless demand of
Hmm.
clients. Um, Other people say, stressors in their personal life or dealing with insurance. But of the burnout therapists, 84% said they need more rest and that they're emotionally drained. And 40% said that they have difficulty actually engaging in non-work activities because they're overwhelmed. Um, and I just thought that was interesting of like the thing that I gleaned from that is that just like that whole lever idea is that therapists have a difficult time uh, being able to pull away from the work and
Hmm.
to feel kind of recentered on, you know, uh, things that give them life, give them energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Those, I don't know, it would be interesting to compare this to if there's any data from years ago to see kind of how much it's increasing. But
Yeah,
my guess would be that these numbers are higher than they were previously.
yeah,
And it concerns me for many reasons. But number one, like we need therapists to do well and to be
hmm,
well. Like you mentioned before, that the rising need and demand might be too strong of a word, but the rising need for mental health services, we can't lose 29%
yeah,
of therapists. That would be terrible, right?
yeah,
So we need to make some changes on a personal level, probably,
yeah,
and on an industry level to make sure that this job is sustainable
yeah, yeah,
for more
totally.
people, and also attractive and desirable for people coming
Yeah,
into new careers. So
yeah. It's
yeah.
it's hard for me to kind of parse apart the work-life balance explanation
Hmm.
because part of me goes, okay, um, you know, is it that therapists have a hard time with self-care, or is it that it's an underpaid or undervalued profession by
Hmm.
insurance companies, let's say? And so I'm thinking about like how much do you say, okay, therapists need to do a better job of setting boundaries? And then how much do you say, insurance companies or whatever situations need to provide adequate pay so that therapists don't feel the pressure to overwork themselves and burn themselves out? That's a hard thing to
It
say,
is.
like as somebody who believes in taking personal responsibility, at least for myself, I go, I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job taking care of myself. But
Hmm.
at the same time, you exist in a system that, um, creates certain incentives, and creates certain realities for us financially.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a difficult hamster wheel. It can be a difficult hamster wheel to be on because I mean, all therapists have a ton of compassion and empathy for the people that we serve, right? So if we could, a lot of us would work for free and offer our services for free, but we
Uh-huh.
can't do that. So for a therapist that wants to make their services as accessible as possible, they might say, hey, well, I'm going to take insurance. I'm only going to work with insurance clients. And like
Right,
you mentioned, sometimes that leads to very low reimbursement rates. So that therapist then has to work more
right.
to make enough to survive.
Yeah,
And that situation hardly ever improves, right? You don't get a
right,
notice from the insurance company that says, "Hey, you're doing a great job. We're going to pay you more."
right. And
No,
then
it
do we
doesn't.
go, right? And then do we go, and then not only are you overworked, but also you need to do a better job of setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You need to manage your self-care better.
Right.
I feel a little resistant to kind of going all the way that way and saying,
Yeah.
it's your work life, it's your difficulty managing your work-life balance. At the same time, it's like, man, sometimes that's all that's in our control, like
Right.
is that's all we can do. Um,
Yeah, that's an interesting situation. On a personal level, I can say that like for a number of years, I felt like I wanted to get therapy as a working therapist, right?
yeah,
Nothing so critical that it was like an absolute need, but I
uh,
was like, it would be good for me to get back into therapy, right?
yeah,
And for a
yeah,
number of years, I didn't because I felt like I can't afford it, right? So
yeah,
you could tell somebody you need better self-care or you should get a support system, but
right.
if it's difficult to impossible for them to get that,
Hmm.
that's like where's the
Where are you
lever,
left?
right?
It wasn't that right. It
Yeah,
wasn't that you didn't value it enough or something.
right.
There's a certain reality that you're in, that I'm in, in that situation that that determines how much you can actually push that lever and experience relief,
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that is it's difficult. It's like there is a certain reality, and then you kind of go back on the other side too, like, you know, sometimes our ability to push that lever to kind of stop the demands can help us handle many more challenges than we think we can. Like
Hmm.
when we can actually reconnect with a secure base, when we can actually feel connected and okay with a larger community or with close relationships or whatever else that is, I think that is where our strength lies, and that we have so much more accessible to us when we're able to do that. But I do think there's a downward spiral that we get into where we feel more pressured financially, and then we can't make those
Hmm.
decisions to take care of ourselves. We end up bending boundaries more, and we dig ourselves into a hole. Or I don't know if dig ourselves into a hole is the right phrase there, but
Find
that
ourselves in
we
a
end
hole.
we
Yeah.
find ourselves in this
Right.
spot. But maybe it's just even part of this conversation is just how helpful it is to just recognize or take stock
Hmm.
of where we lie in these things, as you're listening, to think how much do I struggle with this work-life
Hmm.
balance issue? How much do I, withhold myself from actually engaging in things that would be refilling to me, you know? Um, and like a couple years ago, as I was trying to rethink some things with my business, I remember feeling really stressed and then going, you know what, as much as it sounds counterintuitive, I need to like get away. And, I took a whole weekend for like 3 days, and I just took, and that was hard for me to do. It wasn't like, oh, I have time to go do this. I had to like sacrifice other things to actually do that. And it was hard, but I had to tell myself from this place inside of going like, if I do this, I'm going to be able to access the part of me that needs to be there if I'm going to make a change in my life. If not, I'm going to stay in this kind of whirlpool, kind of, nothing's going to change. And so I remember I doing that. That's kind of what helped me feel different inside enough to be able to make the changes that I needed to in my business, in my personal life, to kind of reorient myself. But I think it takes a lot of support to sometimes make
Hmm.
those decisions, wherewithal, all those kind of things to kind of reorient ourselves.
Yeah. I'm glad you did that. That takes a ton of intentionality too, right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
to set that time aside and then use it in a way that's like rejuvenating and all that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I experienced that with you.
Especially if you have a family and or other
Yeah.
obligations, right?
Totally. Totally. I
Yeah.
was going to say, I experienced that with you, even this last year, kind of being on a retreat with you and being able to kind of just, even when you don't intend to talk about, whatever issues are pressing at you, like the way that it's just refreshing to just pull back for a minute
Right.
and to feel filled up.
Yeah. That was a highlight for me too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about a time when I felt burned out. This was a number of years ago, and I was working full time as a therapist. And I think what led to my sense of burnout was I was working almost exclusively with teenage boys and their families. And
Wow.
this one particular time where I just kind of looked at my calendar and I realized that it was really almost all teenage boys. And
Whoa.
they were, my favorite clients, but they were super challenging because none of them wanted to be there. And so I
Oh
was always
no.
working real hard to like get them engaged and, like
Uh-huh.
using all my superpowers to try to make this thing go. And I was like, man, I am
Uh,
just tired. And
yeah.
there's a
You don't
sense
have
of
any
like,
superpowers.
you're right.
Yeah.
There's a sense of like, am I making any difference at all here? And
Yeah.
so I remember one of the things that I did intentionally was to get plugged into a good consultation group
Hmm.
that was with other therapists who were also working with youth and families. And that just helped a ton to feel, not alone, even though maybe that situation at that time didn't change significantly. My experience of it did change because of
Hmm.
having that support. So it was really
Wow.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it might seem like a small change at the time, but you go, that's what you needed to get out of the
absolutely.
spiral right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my perception of you, of knowing you for a few years, is that you're actually quite good at self-care
Hmm.
and prioritizing things that are important to kind of keep you at your best.
Hmm.
What do you think are some best practices for therapists listening to this that they
Yeah.
could consider from, small things to maybe more significant things?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Something I remember a time when I was first starting out, when I was very anxious about growing my practice to take care of my family. I have 4 kids, and And so sometimes even just like health insurance, I feel the demand of that. I'm
Sure.
like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this engine going? But I remember feeling that so acutely, and I would work on Sundays and on Fridays, and like so I'd work like 6 days a week, and I remember just reaching that same point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And it was hard because I still felt like, oh my gosh, everything's going to fall apart if I change anything. I can't afford to change anything. And
Hmm.
I imagine that's the same kind of place that we're talking about here. Like it just felt overwhelming. Luckily, my therapist at the time was like, I think the thing that he said to me that stuck out most was, Connor, I don't think things are going to fall apart the way that you think they're going to fall apart.
Hmm.
And that there was something in the fact that he's a therapist too, and he understands that same pressure to help me to change some things, that helped me to kind of consider creatively, okay, if I could change this, how would I do it? So what I started to do is take Fridays off and Sundays off. And every Wednesday I don't go into work until about 11 or 12, and I just ride my bike, it's time away from the phone. Often I'm in the mountains where, there's no reception or anything. And it just washes everything away for a minute, and as hard as it is, there's times when I go, oh, I could be seeing clients during that time. There are times when I'm stressed and I'm like, I could be, taking care of things that are on my plate. Um, just like that whole learned helplessness scenario, you go, um, how much empowerment does it give me though, to be able to say no and to pull away and to just feel like myself? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not, a
Hmm.
business owner right now. I'm just a body on a giant mountain, and that's it. And that experience has been what helps me to push harder the times that I'm working. I think that's the thing I didn't understand before, is I thought it was a one-to-one thing that I have to spend a certain amount of time on things in order to get it done. But this is actually something that you've talked to me about too, of like, of that, even though it takes maybe a moment, for example, to set up a virtual assistant, let's say, or to delegate something, when you think smarter like that, it makes you think about time differently. Not that you have to work hourly for yourself, you have to put a certain amount of time into something, but sometimes the thing you need is to pull away and to
Right.
go, what do I need to do and what do I not need to do? You can't think about that. That's hard. That's a hard problem to solve when you're stressed, or when you're in it. Sometimes you have to pull out of the trench to go, oh, that's what it looks like,
Hmm.
like that's what the landscape is. And I don't have to worry about this, but this is the thing I need to worry about. So anyway, so I take Wednesday mornings off, and then Friday through Sunday are just me and the family, and not worrying about work. And again, I think that's what helps me to push harder on the days when I am working, knowing
Yeah,
that I actually have a lever that's going to be pulled, on Wednesday morning where I can stop.
I like that. I'm actually rereading a book right now called Time Off,
Hmm.
and it's kind of a long book, but it has a lot of case studies from historical figures um, from a long
Hmm.
time ago and more recent folks. And the idea is that you need to develop what they call a rest ethic
Hmm.
in addition to your work ethic,
Huh.
because a lot of times, and they have a bunch of cool stories, but a lot of times part of productivity and getting things done is actually taking a walk in the woods or doing things that don't look like
Hmm.
work, but
Hmm.
they're actually they add to your ability to,
Right.
make a contribution. It's really pretty cool concept. And then they also talk about noble leisure, which is something
Huh.
we've definitely lost sight of, certainly in North America.
It makes
Or
it sound really good too, that term.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Noble
yeah,
leisure. Yeah.
noble leisure.
Uh-huh.
It means not just necessarily sitting in a hammock with a margarita in your hand, but maybe you're in your garage building something, or maybe you are, doing
Right.
something that is active, but it's also sort of restful and rejuvenating.
Right.
Because one of the things I often ask people that I talk to, and it's usually therapists who own their own practice, is what are your hobbies? Like, what do you do for fun? We can talk about work all day long, but
Yeah.
what do you do outside of that? And if there's nothing there, also like when did you take a vacation last, right?
Right.
But if
Right.
there's no vacations planned or in the recent past, and there's no hobbies or things that you enjoy spending your time on, then you might be losing your way just a little bit and probably inching towards some kind of burnout, I would think.
Right. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Noble leisure. Yeah, the idea of like when you're not doing something, you're not really not doing anything. You know, your mind's working out a problem. It's figuring something out. It's doing something that's for your benefit. Some part of me resists the idea of having to make a productivity argument for non-productive time. For example, to go, oh, this
Right.
is good for me to go on a bike ride because it's going to help me work. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, am I just a
sure.
machine? But on the other hand, you go, well, if I need to make the argument, I can, there's passive processing going on. Your mind is passively
Hmm.
working through
Hmm.
the problems that you need to fix when you do that. When you
Right.
engage in play, you are trying to work through the most important problems that you have that are holding space in your mind. But on the other side, you go, it doesn't need to be productive in order for it to feel beneficial to you as a person that is healing to you or that helps you enter a creative space or access more
Hmm.
of who you are and all those kind of things. But yeah, that's really interesting to
Yeah.
me. The whole
The way I
well-being.
look at it is prioritizing some of these things just for the enjoyment of the thing, but
Yeah,
then also understanding this is actually has sort of a secondary benefit as
yeah,
well. So that's
yeah,
not the primary reason to go for a bike ride, right? But it's like, oh,
right.
this is probably going to help me be the best version of myself in all
Yeah.
areas of my life. So
Yeah, I could feel
yeah,
that too. To again reference our time, where we
hmm,
got together on a retreat of like how with the group of guys that we were at, how many of there's like five,
I think
seven,
five or
something like that.
six. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, there was an impulse towards creative space where we just don't want to do anything. We just want to enjoy a good meal or hang out, talk, connect, and go out by going on a hike or having fun in some way. But there was an equal impulse to reflect, in that
Hmm.
time. It felt like almost like it felt like some kind of hunger for time to just connect with another person or to work something out and to tool it over. And I felt that the same things. I think those same impulses are part of what we need when we're burnt out is this connection that's not just
Right.
about, hey, how you doing, blah, 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 surface talk, but that there's a hunger there, maybe in both parties for some kind of rejuvenation or reflection in some way.
Definitely. Some open
Yeah.
space,
Hmm.
some time to just, yeah, reflect and connect
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah.
For sure. I hope a lot of people are listening to this episode because these are important topics and we need to be intentional about these things. I always try to think, I make a joke about like if I'm overworked, I got to talk to my boss because, something's not working. And then
Uh-huh.
and then I'm like, the joke is that I'm the boss, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Right.
that
Right.
if I'm working too hard or I'm not making enough money, it's because, you
Yeah.
know, I need
Yeah.
to make a
Who's making
decision.
these decisions?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know
Sure.
not everybody listening to this podcast works for yourself. I understand that.
Right. Right.
But if something in your life is not working to the point where you feel trapped or you feel
Yeah.
consistently overwhelmed or like you just can't go on, then it's absolutely time to take a look at what you have control over and make some changes because honestly, life is too short to live
Right.
in a state of burnout or depression or,
Right.
whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I would say the first step on that spiral upward is not to try to problem solve. It's to pull
Hmm.
away and connect, you know, to find ways, even if it's like something as simple as like call your mom, like, call your brother, call somebody, pull away, let yourself cool down because when we're in that fight or flight mode, that place of helplessness where we're just burnt out from constant
Hmm.
demand, it is the worst place to try to make a decision. We can't, it's
Right.
impossible. And that's what also, in this survey again, they talked about is like that most of the therapists, that their chosen way to deal with burnout is that they reach out to other therapists for support.
Hmm.
They try
Hmm.
to kind of reconnect. And I think that's something that we all kind of feel intuitively. How do we do that? That's certainly the same kind of space that I want to create for my own practice, where
Yeah,
um, there's some kind of freedom to casually just experience connection and experience help as we reach out to each other. Um, Something that I think is worth creating space for more in our world.
that's awesome. Yeah, so this is not an intentional transition, but if somebody's listening to this and you figure you need to make some sort of change, maybe you need to expand your team and get some help with the things
Yeah,
that you're trying to manage in your practice, and maybe that looks like hiring a virtual assistant, and that's
yeah,
what we do here at Productive Therapist. And maybe it also looks like improving the tools and the processes that you have in your practice. So looking at whether or not there's some things you can automate in your kind of workflows. And maybe that looks like using a better EHR.
Yeah.
or an EHR if you have none at this
Yeah.
point. Obviously, Simple Practice, I'm a huge fan, and
Yeah.
it makes life so much easier in a lot of different ways.
But so being on that receiving side again of what you're saying, like
Hmm.
I've taken so long to make those changes you're talking about there about, I remember when I hired my
Right.
first VA, it took me so long. And actually my own brother was the one who was like, Connor, why haven't you done that yet? You're the one answering all the the consultation calls or whatever. Like,
Right.
do you realize you charge a lot per hour? You're saying you're spending your
Yeah.
time but it's like that was that feeling of going, I can't let it's like I'm juggling 10 objects. If I move
Hmm.
one of these things, everything's going to come down. But the
Hmm.
reality was the opposite. It was so much relief when I made that change, when I started to do that, and you don't realize in the moment how much more of yourself you're going to be able to access when you make a change like that. So
Yeah.
very much I'm on that side of it too with you. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so easy to do too much for too long. And
Yeah.
if you have your own private practice, you just naturally step into doing all the things from the accounting to the networking to the marketing to,
Mhm.
cleaning the stains out of the carpet.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, why do I hate my life?
Uh-huh.
Well, maybe
Right.
because you're doing everything and you don't have a break,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
Sure.
doesn't have to be
Totally.
that way.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing this information today. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
it's insightful and interesting and concerning to hear those stats from the Simple Practice study. And I hope we can, with the various different things that you and I are both doing, we can make a small dent in that, at least for the
Right.
people who work in our, who we support in our practices
Yeah.
and the people we influence outside of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
agree with you.
where can people go to find out more about you if they are curious about your
Oh,
co-practice
yeah.
and different things you
Sure.
have
Yeah.
going on?
Herecounseling.com is what I do. HERE, Here Counseling. Yeah, we're in Los Angeles. We have membership options, but we also have retreats that come up, where therapists can connect with each other and support each other, learn marketing skills, those kinds of things. And I have a marketing book out, that helps therapists with their marketing. It's 108 pages, talks all about
Yes.
digital marketing, and feels like it gives a lot of good attention to some of the emotional side of that, of how to actually make those changes in a lasting way. So yeah, you can check that out too.
That's awesome. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And
Okay.
yeah, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and hit the subscribe button to make sure you never miss an episode. If you're looking for more personalized help, you can reach us through productivetherapist.com. Thanks so much for listening. We are Productive Therapist, and this is the podcast that helps therapists get more done and have more fun.